Good evening. It's a little past 6. Today is August 22nd, 2016. The Bennington Select Board is convening at the Bennington Fire Facility in our bi-weekly meeting. For the purposes today, my name is Tom Jacobs, and I am serving as chair of the Select Board right now. I'd like to have the rest of the members introduce themselves after I introduce Stu Hoskins. See, did it again. Stu Hurd, our esteemed, since Linda is not here, and Nancy Lively, who's going to sit in for us, and Linda Bermudez, who's decided to take time off. Justin Corcoran called in a bit ago, and he's been really overwhelmed with work. He's got a new position, which has been really interfering with his ability to be here. So Justin extends his regrets. But the rest of the board, Jean?
Jean Connor.
Jim Carroll.
Michael Keane.
Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, I'm Donald Campbell.
Great, and let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If the board will allow, the consent agenda has been circulated. The minutes of the August 8th meeting were included, and the warrants have also been circulated. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Further discussions, questions, comments? Go ahead.
I just have one question. It's on page 5. I believe it's the electric bill, but it's enormous, and I'm just curious why.
That's it.
It's right up here.
Yes, that's the total electric charges for all town buildings and operations from, it probably is mid-June to mid-July.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, it's fairly high, and you'll note that the highest account is the wastewater treatment facility.
Yeah.
And the 5280 account is a highway account, most likely related to the 2 garages that we operate. And those are pretty much the majority.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If none, if I don't hear any, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
And that is 6 in favor and no opposition to the consent agenda. Before we hear from the citizens tonight on our matters that are not on the agenda, for which we allocate 15 minutes of our time before we get into the business of the meeting, I just want to share a couple of observations. Last week I was a good part of the week in Canada, and as I was coming back to the States, my wife read to me the banner headlines for a couple of days, and I was surprised and disappointed to see the headline in a couple of instances, but more particularly the area of concern that I had was disappointment to see that our vice chair, Michael Keane, had made the front pages for reasons that were not acceptable to him or to yours truly, for inappropriate comments in social media on his personal face page. I've had discussions with Michael earlier, and he's requested an opportunity to make a statement in response to what has been the situation and his reasonable attempt to deal with that issue.
Thank you, Tom, and good evening, everybody. I really want to start by saying how sorry I am for the post that I put on my Facebook page last week that Joey Culkin and many others found offensive. I've spoken with Joey and extended my apologies to him. I also offer my apologies to our community, all of you and others maybe listening in the community, for my ill-conceived choice of words. It was not my intention to challenge Joey's religious or ethnic heritage. I have great respect for people of the Jewish faith and traditions. I have been married to a Jewish woman for 32 years, who's sitting right in front of me now. If there were a speck of that bias in me, Edie would have picked up on that and we would not be together. She would not put up with that for 1 minute. Again, I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Again, Michael has made the comments in light of the situation. I see no reason to say anything further, at least from my perspective. The issue is probably even broader than what Michael has shared, because social media has become a mode of not only communication, which is a good one, but it's been also a tool of abuse to spread rumor, innuendo, misstatements, and otherwise. And I'm not directing it at any one individual, but it's basically a national, if not international, issue. There's little that we can do other than say, you know, come on, world, let's use some common sense. Remember the fact of we used to talk with each other. You know, what's wrong with face-to-face? If you have something of concern, talk to the individual, pick up the phone or stop by, because most of us are pretty reasonable in that context. We don't go out of our way to make life difficult. And this town has a host of issues that have to be addressed, and we need folks that support and not distract from that effort. And that's not a soapbox, it's just a fact. So if there are no more comments, I'm going to ask the citizens who have a 15-minute period to comment on matters that are not before the select board this evening. And do I see Jim Lawton, who looks like he's first in line?
Make sure I got the things in
Jim,
order here
could you
first.
just get right close to that mic, just so we can all hear you on the cable TV as well as here?
For those of you who don't know me, my name is James Lawton. I am a lifelong resident of Bennington. Thank you, Tom.
Sure. We're here to support you in your comments, so take your time and breathe deep.
Jeannie, if I get through this, can I get an honorary A on my effective speaking that I had to drop at school? Thank you. My wife and I want to thank everyone on the select board, as well as all of our town officials, for your service in this community. We truly know how difficult it is in today's political climate. I asked that my friend Jim be here, because there might actually be parts of this I can't read. First, I would like to ask a little leeway and patience from everybody here, as this will be a difficult and emotional thing for me to get through. I promise that even though I am functioning on less than 6 hours of sleep in the last 3 days, I am here to act in a civil, respectful, and compassionate manner, because that is what I and my wife want to ask from each and every one of you on the board, everyone here in this audience, the people watching at home, and the rest of the people in this community. We have to return to civil discourse, because it is the cornerstone of our democracy. I would like to share 2 posts of my own that I've made on my page over the last couple of days, as all of the headlines and events unfolded for both my family and our community. This one came from a powerful moment that I had while I was at work Sunday. And it is what inspired me to come here tonight. It included pictures of the monument and a view to the north, the south, the east, and the west. And my post read, "This is the Bennington I grew up in. Reflecting today, while at work at the Bennington Battle Monument, on the beauty, majesty, and strength we have here in our community. A Bennington that stands with a 306-foot, 4-inch reminder of what a powerful place we hold in America's history. A Bennington where our neighbors watched out for each other, with thoughtful care and compassion, not the Bennington as recently seen. Ugly, hateful, racist attacks on my family. Sorry. Not the Bennington that has seen public elected officials, and not just one, display some of the same or similar behaviors toward its own citizens. This needs to change. For the safety and well-being of everyone. My main reasons for being here tonight may seem like they are not connected, but I will connect the dots for you. First, I am here to make you aware that true hate is living in our community, the scale of which goes beyond the comprehension of most of us who live here. They are living next door to us. They are working out in the gyms next to us and shopping in the stores that we frequent. They are monitoring and participating in our social media platforms. They are members of neo-Nazi and other white supremacist groups. And their rage and their hatred is so deep in their hearts that they are a very and real threat to the health and well-being of people they choose to target in our community. That is why I implore you all to understand how much, as representatives of our community, whether elected or otherwise, the words that you choose to use in public, on social media or any other platform that is available today, carry so much weight. It is of vital importance that as representatives of this town, that we rise above the type of actions that involve racist and ethnical attacks and other disturbing discourse in our communications on any medium, or we are no better than them. And we are adding fuel to the flames that consume these dangerous individuals who are listening for their calls to arm. If this presidential campaign has shown us nothing else, it has shown us that hateful rhetoric from elected officials and those who wish to be elected can inspire and give license to people to perform serious acts of violence. The current Republican candidate did not tell those men in Boston to beat up that homeless Latino man and leave him for dead. But there is no doubt in many people's minds that they answered his hateful rhetoric because his words triggered a very different conversation that they hear than you and I hear. I posted this when the Banner article came out about what a member of a select board had posted. After coming off the week that my family just had, with a neo-Nazi that lives in Bennington posting ugly, racist caricatures of my wife on social media, and who is a real danger and threat to my family's safety. It was devastating to see in the Banner today that a local elected official made similar bigoted posts about a local citizen. Knowing this person is not a dangerous man, like the person behind my wife's attacks, does not make the post okay, especially because he is a representative of this town and is supposed to be a leader of our community. I, as well as my wife, reached out to this board member personally and admonished him severely for what he had done. I told him that his first apology for this action was weak and it seemed very insincere, and I suggested that he step up and do a much better job. I informed him that due to the very real danger that is currently present in this town, he could very well have made this citizen, as well as his own family, a new target for these people. He heard me, and he responded very positively. I would like to close with a quote from my wife. This will probably be the hardest one to read. This isn't about political correctness, nor an attack on freedom of speech. This is about openly identifying, calling out, and correcting hateful actions and words. These acts are part of a continuum of bias and discrimination. We each have an obligation as members of this community to take direct action. Think carefully about your language and what it means. No matter how much we oppose another person's ideology, politics, or personal behavior, it does not, nor should it ever give license to use bigoted actions or language to level our disapproval. This type of behavior has no place in our community. We trust that you as a board and leaders of our community will handle this matter appropriately and with the correct measure of discipline to ensure that members of this community who are watching you will know and see that you see this type of behavior as completely unacceptable. We hope that you will do your best to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And if the board and the town do not currently have a social media policy in place, we strongly recommend you research what other municipalities have in place and enact one as soon as possible. Thank you again for your time. Also, I want to let people know I did do some research myself, and I handed the board members a social media policy from a town that was very well done. And I have copies of it here if any one of you would like to pick some up. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Other members of the community?
Good evening. Jeff Grimshaw from Bennington. There's a little more fallout here that may more than meets the eye here. Of course, as reported, the Bennington Jewish Center has admonished Select Board Member Keene for his actions. And so that is a pillar of our community saying this is way, way out of bounds. As a member of the media, we sometimes get things that others don't. We did receive an email reply by one Aaron Breitbart of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, who was given this post and calls it of great interest, and they may be investigating further. So to say that the matter is kind of closed, let's move on, that may not just be the case. I would caution the select board in whatever actions they take that Bennington runs the risk of having an anti-Semite tag put on it, and we all know that could be extremely, extremely bad for business for Bennington moving forward. The way that's characterized as a momentary lapse, I don't accept it, and here's why. I and my business have been the victim of hundreds of attacks by Mr. Keene, ranging from our incompetence to outright mockery, and it went on and on and on. Now, the good news is Mr. Keene came to me, hat in hand, last October, and he apologized for all those. And I accepted that apology. And due to outside circumstances, those attacks have started again. So I would caution the board, I would caution the town of Bennington, I would caution all those in listening that we need to hold Mr. Keene to this apology. It's easy to backslide. This is a long, long pattern of behavior. And I'm glad that everyone wants to see it stop. It must stop now. The other, and to amplify what James said, we did try, because of social media posts, we did try to enact a social media policy. That policy was done by, correct me if I'm wrong, a small committee. Mr. Keene was on that committee. Some might say Fox was in the henhouse. Now, when you came out of committee, it was common sense. So I urge the select board to apply that common sense and see if what has happened makes common sense, and if not, to do something about it. Do something actionable, because if you don't, all of you, you're going to take the wrath of the populace of Bennington. It's out there in social media. And so that, I will conclude with that.
I appreciate your comments, and we will take them to heart. And we do not disregard the comments that are made, particularly by Mr. Lawton. He's been faced with untoward, basically fear that have been directed to he and his family, and that is not acceptable. As far as Mr. Keene, you've heard his apology. Whether it's accepted by the community, he can only offer it, and I can tell you
How about this? I'm sorry, Tom.
No, excuse me, let me finish.
Keene, okay, absolutely.
We don't have to go falling on our swords. When you make an apology, you make an apology. And if that's accepted by the community, well and good. But we are hoping that the community recognizes that this was a sincere response to obviously a situation that was beneath his dignity. And frankly, I am very confident that he has both the skill and the wisdom to take it to heart.
Okay. Might I ask one last item? Might I ask Mr. Keene to pledge with his heart and his dignity and his reputation that he will cease and desist with ugly posts on Facebook?
Excuse me, you're out of order. We all have First Amendment rights, and we have every right to speak as we would want from a perspective of our personal responsibility. And for him to make that kind of a response would be totally inappropriate.
Okay, I apologize for that, but I will answer with, we do all have freedom of speech, and I guard the freedom of First Amendment with my very life and soul. But there are penalties, and we in Bennington may be staring at some pretty harsh penalties if we do not curb our social media behaviors. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any others? And I'd like to recognize the fact that we're well into our citizens' comment period, and I'd like to have Edie.
Mine will be really short.
Okay, just identify yourself for the record, please.
Sure. My name's Edie Sawitsky. I've lived in North Bennington for over 10 years with my husband, Michael Keene. I'm Jewish. My family is Jewish. Dybbuk means a wandering spirit. There are 118 derogatory terms for Jew on the racial slur database at rsdb.org. Not one of them is Dybbuk. I wanted to be here because I don't want anyone to think that I do not support my husband 110%. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. We will now move to the business of the meeting tonight. The first item that will be talked about will be the parking on Main Street. Stu, if you could bring us up to date on where we're at on that discussion.
Well, basically, the board asked, well, I should say the citizens asked for a very shortened time frame for parking in front of their business on Main Street. Currently, we have a 2-hour limit in the downtown area. It is sporadically enforced because we don't seem to have a lot of problems, although individual businesses may see problems from time to time with employees of businesses parking in front of their own businesses. But at this point, I would not be here recommending anything more than or less than a 2-hour limit. That is what is enforced in the downtown. If the board chooses to enforce a limit on Main Street throughout the community, then, or at least in the commercial areas throughout the community, then I would encourage you to not go under 2 hours.
You've heard the recommendation from the town manager. Folks, do you have some comments that you would like to respond with?
I think we'd be consistent if we use the 2-hour limit for all of the town of Bennington where there are parking limits. And we could, for example, see how that works up at Canaan for a year or something.
The bakery,
At the Dutch bakery.
because it's outside the business.
Yeah.
I think 2 hours is frankly too long. You know, if we're interested in having greater turnover in the downtown business district, make it a shorter time.
What about restaurants and things, though?
Well, if it's take an hour to eat, for you, doesn't mean 10 minutes, done.
Go ahead. I think Jean's-
I think the 2-hour limit, in my opinion, works downtown. I think their situation is really unique. There's no other place for people to park. Downtown, if you have to walk a block, it's not a big deal. But where their business is, they only have, I think it's maybe 6 spots on the street, and then you have a couple in your lot. So I don't know how to do it, but I feel like their situation is unique, and I think we should maybe try to find a solution that benefits them.
Could we have varying amounts for different areas? Or is it spot?
Jim, the unfortunate part is, or the fortunate part, it's public parking. The public has a right to park there, and it's not parking for their business, unfortunately.
Okay.
Their business uses it, and people who use their business use it, but it's not parking that was set up for their business. And as the public servants, we can't do that.
Oh, yes, you can, and you have.
We,
And I want to point out to you, because I did it for nearly 10 years, there was a sign posted at my car that allowed people 15 minutes.
that's because that was
If
a
I
vendor
was not
space.
occupied.
That was a vendor
And then it
space,
got
Jim.
kind of crowded.
But that was done because all of the vendor spaces had a similar sign, so that the vendors could move into their space because they had paid to be there on a regular basis. And we do limit parking in certain spaces at the town offices to encourage turnover. But when you start talking about the public street and people who come to do business in Bennington, whether it's go to the bakery or go to a restaurant or go get a newspaper, to ask them to be in and out of there in a half hour,
All right, well, as long as we're on the topic, I
and
remember as a
then
kid.
who enforces it?
Right, well, right. But I remember as a kid on what is it, the south side of the street, it was diagonal parking. Could we bring that back and therefore,
We can't bring it back.
why?
Street's not wide enough.
It's as wide as it ever was.
No, no. The diagonal parking takes up a substantial amount of room. Narrowing the lane width to less than 14 feet, which is the required lane width for tractor-trailer traffic. Back in those days, tractor-trailers were not the issue that they are today. We could not put diagonal parking on Main Street. Yes, it would increase the number of spaces, but then you're encouraging people to back out into this public thoroughfare. That's a move that we all agree is not safe. So no, we can't do that. I leave it to you folks to make the determination, but I'm encouraging you not.
We want to go hear everybody's comments. Go ahead. You.
No, so my memory was that in front of the bakery, it's actually unlimited parking because
Right.
they're outside the area where even the 2-hour parking is posted. Is that accurate?
I'm sorry, one more time, please.
That in front of the bakery, the 2-hour parking doesn't even.
No, it
isn't-
doesn't exist there.
Right.
It's only within the downtown at the present
Right.
time.
So, and for all intents and purposes, we do not enforce the 2-hour parking limit. I mean, we don't ticket people if they park there all day.
No,
Within
we
the
generally
downtown.
don't. We have, obviously, I mean, it would be one thing if there was a parking problem and people were clamoring for spaces to park. But there isn't a parking problem in Bennington.
Well, I would argue that in front of that bakery, there is a parking problem because I go there on the weekend and I tend
But
to.
are there people, so you can't
There
get in
are-
because other people are using the bakery?
The three parking spots are taken, and there's usually someone in the driveway. I actually park on Burgess Road, possibly illegally. So,
Possibly.
you know, so.
Hey, you do what you have to do for the,
You're not going to make that admission
So,
on the record.
no, but if, I don't understand why we can't say in this area, we want 30-minute parking. You have a limited parking sign in front of the town office, right?
I didn't say you can't say it. You
Okay,
are the
I think
board.
we
You
should.
can say it.
I think it's crazy not to, because they are prime spots, and it is dangerous, as Donald mentioned last meeting. It is dangerous to back out of the driveway at Crinan, so I actually back in, which is, you know, an exciting maneuver, which is why I end up on Burgess Road. So, you know, so really those 3 spots are the only spots for the bakery. And if someone decides to park there for the afternoon, then they're only, you know, it's more coveted parking space. I think we should figure out how to make a shorter parking time there.
As you wish.
Donald?
it feels like the problem we're trying to solve is the new problem we're trying to solve is the change of use across the street and potential problems that might come with that. And so it feels to me that the problem that is most pressing is somebody parking there for a long time, say all day, or half the day, or overnight, or something like that. And I'm absolutely, I might be more of a fan of the bakery than you are. And, you know, I think the idea of shortening the parking is a great idea, but it may be that if we shorten it to 2 hours, like we do the rest of the town, and then we, you know, go through a process of monitoring it and revisiting it.
And signage?
And signage, it may be that we're able to solve the problem with a 2-hour slot. But if we do that, we, I think, need to be open to this idea that it is a very unique situation, and maybe we should, after we've given it the old college try, be open to even shortening it. I guess, Jeannie, my one reservation about going right to the 30-minute spot there is that I could imagine we would have requests from businesses all over the town who could claim some form or another of unique situation. And we could end up just becoming a parking committee. So if we could give the 2-hour thing a shot and see if that solves the problem, and then revisit it, commit to revisiting it in half a year or a year or something like that, that would be my first choice.
Question, how do we monitor the 2 hours? You know, when I grew up in New York City, the 2 hours was the chalk mark. Yeah. Does that still happen or something like that happen?
When we have foot patrols, we generally tend to look for license plates. We don't do a lot of chalking of tires, but we do look to those folks who have parked their car and stay there. Most of the complaints that we act upon are those from long-term businesses who have monitored the people either parking in front of their business or across the street in front of another business, and they're there
We've seen that
all
on the other
day
side of Main
long.
Street, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. Having heard that, I think the Kreinens would, hey, could you come up and just, we can just visit a little bit more? Seeing you happen to be opposite the 3 parking lot spaces with your business. You've heard the discussion relative to the half-hour parking or something shorter than the nothing right now, going to a 2-hour limit. If we tried that for 6 months to see how it worked, other than you having to be sort of like the house or parking lot monitor, does that work?
The problem with that is it's backwards, and the people who come and find the parking spaces full all the time don't come back.
Okay.
Or won't come back. They get discouraged. We see on average probably between 50 and 100 people a day, depending on the day of the week. And if they spend between 10 minutes and an hour on average, as the internet tells us they do, it doesn't take much to do the math. And if you limit the parking to 2 hours,
So it's
we're open
it's
9
the
hours a
rotation.
day.
You're talking about the rotation process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I hear what my colleague Jean is suggesting is that this is a unique area.
I would also like to add to that uniqueness in that the closest municipal lot to our building is more than a half mile away, or about a half mile away, down near the former Pepper Mills restaurant. Whereas the rest of the public parking in town is relatively close to a larger municipal lot.
At one time, was there parking on both sides of the street that I come?
When we first bought the building in '02,
Yeah.
we were told that parking was allowed on both sides of the street. And like Jim said, when I was a kid, people did park on both sides of the street as well, around the corner on Gage Street where it spits out onto Main.
Okay.
And why were those spots taken away on the right-hand side heading into town?
I have no idea that there was a reason to take them away.
Can we restore them?
Oh, it seems like that'd be awfully narrow. That.
Yeah, but here's the
Jim,
point of
can
a
you speak
narrow-
up, please? I can hear you.
The point of having a narrowing
Thank
in the part of the road is people slow down. I don't speed
I don't
through
think
a narrow.
I don't think they want the
opening.
semis coming through their front door, though.
People speed regularly through the area. It is very dangerous, as Don pointed out. And I would strongly caution most of our customers, if they chose to park on the other side of the street, even with the crosswalk there. It's dangerous to cross Main Street there. People go from Henry's and they floor it until they hit that light or the bypass, if they hit it.
Well, and there are lots of trucks that get to
There are a
that
lot.
point with their brakes still on fire from coming down the mountain. We smell it every day on longer at night, so.
And it may be that those spaces were eliminated when the state did the downtown paving project. It's a Class 1 town highway. So the state is responsible for maintaining the pavement, and if we had spaces there that they deemed were not appropriate, they probably eliminated them during that time, and that was a number of years ago when that was last paved.
Jean?
Jeannie mentioned she parks on Burgess Road.
Yep.
Is that not a good place for a few parking places? No,
And the
okay.
side-
So we do have some off-street parking on Burgess Road. We live above the business, and we have some space there. And to answer to Stu about the people that park in front of their businesses downtown, since it is public parking, then we could park our cars there, right, all day in that event, and let people park on our property? Is that what you're saying?
It's 2 hours.
Essentially? I mean, we
Yeah, that's true.
could occupy the spaces ourselves?
Yes,
It would be silly, right?
it'd be
I think it
legal.
would be silly.
Well, one would argue that employees tend to park there to the detriment of the business they work for, but that doesn't seem to trouble them.
Right, and which is why we tend to like to have them open, so people can pull up easily,
Could I
come
have-
in and get out easily and safely.
Could I have a sort of a statement or feeling of the board relative to this for our town manager to have some direction?
I still would love to see if you'd be willing to try it. you know, for a short period of time with a 2-hour stretch and see if there actually is a problem.
So where does the problem come from? Why do we think that we're going to have a problem? Because of the homeless shelter.
Because Don doesn't want
That's-
people to see us as being favored.
But
as
we are
opposed
not favored. The point is that the homeless shelter does not have enough parking spaces. So the parking spaces, you know, when they have an overflow on cars, that's going to be on our side of,
Main Street.
on those parking spaces. So do you will that they just going to move the car, they're going to drive up and down Main Street, and then they move the car back in the lot for 2 hours? That's what you're going to create, in my eyes. So I think we don't ask a heck of a lot for 30 minutes. That is the whole point. It's not a favor. We don't have 100 parking spaces like the downtown businesses, because they have about 100 in a quarter-mile distance. So people are walking. We have to walk about a half a mile. And that is our problem. That's what we're going to create. Dan Monk said, well, let's see.
Yep.
Let's see what happens. It's exactly the same. We like to
Prevent.
You know,
Proactive.
not to
before-
shorten the discussion, but I think we're getting
Before-
further and far behind. Frankly, you know, economic development has been our mantra. You know, we have a business here that's working hard to survive. And frankly, it's a good business, as we all know, because we participate in it. I think anything we can do to assist this business, that's not to the detriment of the rest of the community, is a position well taken. So I would be in favor of a half-hour parking at that, in front of that store.
I would make that motion, but I would also add that we need to put a really distinct, very clear signage right there to make sure that people, A, recognize it and understand that 30 minutes, they're gone.
Well, something that I saw at my former spot, that my successor did was she put bright orange tape around the border.
Defaced it.
Well, technically, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you the number of times that, you know, I had to make calls to the police department to run a tag to remove people. And I think 30 minutes inside of the bakery is plenty of time and will help with turnover for you. So I would go with 30 minutes.
Okay. That's we've got a motion, I haven't got a second yet. I need a second.
Second.
I'd second it.
Now we have from discussion, please.
There's no other businesses adjacent to yours, correct?
Just the transitional home that's
Right.
slated
But
to open across the street.
they're all homes, and all the homes have driveways and places to park their cars. They don't need to use the street for
Right.
parking.
That's correct.
Okay. I didn't think so.
The on-street parking spaces would not be there had we not asked for them originally.
Okay.
Any more discussion? I'm going to call for a vote.
Do we want to send this out with any more direction to the business community on what our thinking is here?
I think my feeling is
Case-by-case
case
basis
by
from
case.
now on.
And if somebody wants to come in, make a persuasive presentation argument, that we should listen with both ears. But I think this is a unique place with again, we don't want to put people in jeopardy of life or limb by having them park across the street or up on Burgess Road. And at the same time, not to diminish the possibility of these folks continuing to be successful. So, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
There's 6 in favor and no opposition, where the motion is that 30 minutes plus signage.
When does this go into effect? Stuart?
It's got to
That's a good question. I'd have to
Probably 6.
check the ordinance. It may, in fact, go into effect immediately. I don't think parking limitations fall under an ordinance amendment. It's just part of the appendices.
And you'll do what's necessary so that it'll call greater attention to the signage.
I'm going to park right there all day long and make sure nobody else parks there.
With a piece of chalk, right?
Thank you, Stu. Thank you, folks.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the citizen survey discussion. I think Mike Harrington's going to lead us through it. And it's again still a discussion, right, Mike?
We haven't launched it yet,
Good.
so
People will be asking tomorrow
in your
why they didn't get it.
in your board packet at the last meeting, we didn't discuss it necessarily openly before the public, but one of the things that the select board has looked to do over the past 2 years is begin to evaluate the performance of the municipality and the town. We did that through a business survey that helped us identify areas that we could improve in as a municipality and how best to reach out to those businesses. The next portion of that was doing a regular citizen survey. So what we did was we looked to, we identified a couple different communities. The town manager actually found one in particular that had a very comprehensive survey that it did and actually had a professional company perform the survey for them and collect and analyze the data. In our mind, we thought we could do something that was much shorter and much more easily completed and evaluated after the fact. So what you have before you is a very rough first draft. Our goal is to really alternate surveying our community, so doing businesses every other and citizens every other year. So we did the business survey a little over a year ago. We'd look to administer this survey and collect the data before the end of this year, hopefully October-ish, October, November, present it back to the select board, and we'd be looking to survey the business community again towards the end of the first quarter of the next calendar year.
I think Mike, we got that circulated to us when we're requesting comments, and I think we sent them back to you because I don't think it was in our packet this time.
It was not in the packet this time. So I didn't, Michael Keene has looked through this and worked with me on this along with town staff. So we're open to any comment or feedback at this point.
Because I think the first thing that I was surprised by was its length. You know, are you going to keep the attention of the surveyed party? I liked it, and the more I looked at it, the more I liked it, because it does give you a real across the board perspective. But I think there were still some areas that could be called out or somewhat redundant, not really helpful to our community. And I think Jeannie had a number of comments that you suggested that I thought were really good. I think Michael's got those.
Did you pass those on to me, Jeannie?
I think Jeannie passed them to both of us. I know that you had some significant comments about education. And I believe I scooted them off to you. If I didn't, I'll get them back to you.
That'd be great, yeah. I did get Tom's. I don't think I saw Jeannie, so if you could send
I
those.
did want to comment, Tom, on
Sure.
The origin of this survey that Stu and Michael found was from a Midwest community of a larger size than ours. And they have done significant work to cut it down, which says something about the patience of the people in the town where it originated. But it's our first citizen survey, and we'd like to get good data and a lot of data. And then we can figure out what data in subsequent surveys we either don't need to get or we need to supplement with. So I guess I would ask everyone's both patience and tolerance and cooperation when this survey comes out to be sure to answer as much as possible that they feel relevant. And we'll make sure to get your questions in. One comment that I had is something that I have received in conversations with 3 or 4 citizens who, in talking with me about the survey as they don't know anything more about it than it's coming, suggested a question, and I'll put it right on the table for all of us. They suggested whether there should be a question in the survey about whether the town would want to have a question about a mail roll referendum. Not that there would be a referendum there, but would they be interested in that? Is that something that we would want to get information on and test the town's view? And I'm repeating what people have asked me, so I ask my board members to comment on that.
There's not enough time in the meeting tonight to comment or react to it.
question.
I have just one question, Mr. Chairman.
Go.
Mike, did you say the frequency with which this will be conducted is once every other year?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's adequate. I really don't. I think this should be yearly. We should be taking the temperature of the business community and the people of this town on a much more regular basis.
Well, with the exception that you want to have time to take some action, so that if you ask people's opinion and then you want to act on it, you want enough time to actually be able to do something.
Well, I think
So
you can't formulate a plan of action in less than a year.
you can formulate.
But we can't allocate resources, I think, is the issue.
Wasn't
right?
there a
So
problem with survey fatigue too? Wasn't there concern about?
there's concern with survey fatigue. You're surveying the same people, and in some cases, you're surveying them with 2 surveys if they are a business owner or operator, because we'd be conducting these alternating years. So business survey 1 year, citizen survey the next year, so they'd be alternating years. The other piece too is that there's a significant amount of time and resources put into developing the survey, putting the survey out there, collecting the responses, analyzing those responses, presenting them back to the select board, and then the select board determining its best approach for answering some of these comments or concerns. So, again, we run into resources to be able to do that, especially for implementing 2 surveys a year. But then also you get into what Jeannie pointed out, which is our budget is actually, forward thinking in terms of a year in advance, or in this case, eight months in advance of when we approve the budget and when it's implemented.
Ask for it. But I'm serious about this, that it should be done with greater frequency.
I'm just wondering, in partial response to that, I'm wondering about the benefit of having a citizens survey and a business survey running almost simultaneously. Why not have the one in 1 year and then the other one the next? And then you sort of got a rolling information base.
That's what we're recommending here. So we'd be doing this one in 2016, the business survey would happen in 2017,
Okay.
and so on and so forth. It just happens that this one is coming at the end of the year. I mean, we can pick any time in the calendar year. It just happened when we put this together, it's coming in November. And the business one, based on the feedback we received, was that they would like to see that survey at the end of their fiscal year, and most fiscal years for the businesses we surveyed originally was the calendar year. So that's why we picked the first quarter for the business survey.
Tom?
Please.
I left mine on my dining room table, so I don't have it in front of me, but I thought, when I read it a few times, I thought if it was arranged more thematically, it would be a little more user-friendly. And as I was listening, it's sort of an interesting idea to find a group of guinea pigs and resurvey the same people to see how their responses change over time. I don't know, it's just an idea.
That's good feedback, yeah.
Tom? I have a question, and these kinds of questions at the end of surveys always trouble me, and I rarely answer them. The whole section about questions about yourself. We take another 3 or 4 pages asking people questions about whether they're employed, where are they employed, what are they making, do they own their own home, do they rent? From my own perspective, I think those are intrusive questions. I know that analysts like to have that information because it gives them a basis for who's answering the survey. But if we're really looking to get people's opinions, do we really need to know all of that information at the end of
Those
the
that are
survey?
college educated that
Yeah.
answered one way versus another.
Which school did you go to in Bennington?
Yeah.
I just think it'd be,
I don't know.
it's too much at the end of the survey, I think, and yes, from an analytical point of view, it's probably interesting to have that information and help analysts gauge who's responding, but is it really necessary for our purposes?
I don't know. I think some of that information could be valuable because you could see how one group of people feels versus another group of people. I think some of it may be a little lengthy, but I think some of that information could be valuable.
It seems like maybe both of these things could be true, and I'd go back to Jim's point, which I think was fairly insightful, and I believe we all feel this way. The point of this is to try to get a little closer to the pulse of what's happening with the citizenry so that we can better reflect the needs of the citizenry. And, but Stuart, I hate completing surveys. I never do it. They build up on my desk and eventually I throw them out, you know. So I'm the kind of person that's very unlikely to fill out a survey. So maybe, Jim, and maybe we need different methods of soliciting information from people, which we haven't developed yet. But maybe one year we do a survey, the next year maybe there's a different form for doing that. Sometimes they will do things on street corners and you know, have conversations
Random
with people as they go by, or random sampling or something, then go back to the survey the next year. But find different ways of soliciting information so that people like me who loathe surveys, you know, still get our opinions across somehow. No offense.
And what about putting this online, you know, on the town's website instead of mailing out hard copies at?
We wouldn't be mailing out hard copies. So the recommendation would be that we'd put it online and we'd probably mail a card, postcard like we do with our water sewer report or water quality report so that people know where they can take it. They can certainly fill out a paper copy because not everybody is online, but it would be online for them to take. So there were 2 points that I just wanted to comment on. I'll hit Donald's because it was the most recent. I think that's a good perspective because there's a difference between surveying and accepting comments for improvement. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to do both of those. I think that the survey, to me, if I could position it as more of our strategic approach to the future direction of the community versus an immediate need that needs to be resolved right away. For example, the reason we picked administering this in October, November is that that's right in line with budget season. So if we were to play this out on the calendar and we had feedback that we got through the survey, that would help direct the board in its budget process that would happen through January. It would then be voted on. Those monies would then become available in July of the following year. And so the problem becomes if we then resurvey them in November of the same year, we've really only had 4 months of that budget season to actually implement any change. So I think there's 2 pieces here. There's a long-term strategy approach, and then there's the immediate comment, you know, how comments for improvement are.
And if I may, just, I don't want to come across as unsupportive of this.
No, no.
I'm a total hypocrite.
Absolutely.
I would love to have this information. I'd love to have this survey done. I just am being honest. It's the kind of thing that I work around in my daily
Absolutely.
life. And so there may be other ways of trying to work towards some of that information.
I think,
I'd like to make
Go
one
ahead.
further suggestion, Mike, and that is to just echo part of what Donald said about a random sampling of people. I don't know where you'd get those names, whether it would be from the voter checklist, Facebook, wherever, rather than, because I think when you send out a mass mailing for a survey, it may be very democratic and it may represent the majority, but does it reflect what we need to have as for information?
That's good feedback. And I would say to Stuart's comments, I think we can certainly cut down. I mean, we called this and cut this down quite a bit, but we also left it pretty thick for you to see a number of different options, and we fully expect that the version that eventually goes out will be much thinner than this. With Stuart's comments, I think we can cut some of those out, and I think we just need to decide which ones are needed to give us better insight. So if someone says they feel unsafe on their street at night. It would be important for us to know what's the age of that person, are they male, female, because that would direct us in how to then resolve some of those issues. So we just need to be thinking, are there certain questions that it really would be helpful to have some of that demographic information? But I think we could cut some of that out as well.
This is, again, draft. We committed to get you a draft in by the first session in August and have a discussion. There's nothing wrong with us having another discussion when you've had a chance to look again and identify some specific areas where either you want an addition or, hey, take this out for this time, for example, maybe try it the next time.
Right.
Yep.
But I think getting as much information as possible the first time, and then whatever we call the second one, whether we call it a random sampling, or whether we designate X number of people on the checklist to receive it. That's.
I wasn't involved in the development of this at all, but it seems to me if you're thinking about the goal and the purpose of it and kind of work backwards to make sure that the development and the questions address the ultimate goal and purpose of what you want to accomplish. So that's how I would attack it.
Absolutely.
What's the timeline that you're working toward?
I think we can make some edits and get this back in September. Again, we'd love to have it administered before the end of the year so it can help direct the town manager and the budget that he presents to you, and then the select board in terms of the budget that they propose to the public.
And how do you envision getting this out to the population?
So we've got a couple different venues, but essentially there'd be an electronic opportunity for them to fill it out online through a link through our town site, and then I think in general we could very easily do a postcard mailing that encourages people to go online, or to say if they'd like to fill it out hard copy, here are 5 places where those hard copies are available. We've done that, I think, with the recreational survey that we did. Yeah.
Could you do that like we talked briefly about the election, having it at the polls?
I'm sorry, Tom?
Having it at the polls, election day? So
It could be at the polls. You're now into November. You'd need them back pretty quickly. Remember, the manager and his department heads start their budget process in October. Through the end of November, we get it to you in and around the Christmas holidays. But that should work. And we can make it available at the town offices, at the library, at the recreation center.
Yeah, we could certainly put it in the paper as well.
We could get a more generalized random sampling at the polls, I believe.
Well, I think so.
And I won't speak for the rest of the board, but I'll speak for myself that I would certainly be in favor of, allocating funds so that you could get this done. Mike, if you had to hire some assistance to get this done, I would certainly be in favor of that.
The more people who fill it out online, the easier it is.
Yes.
When they're filled out in paper, then you're punching in every response. So.
I mean, at the polls, I would envision the hard copy plus or the card where you can get the access to it online.
I think there's that opportunity. There may be an opportunity for us to set up a table with a couple laptops if people wanted to fill it out right at the polls. So I think there's a couple different possibilities.
That's great.
One of the things that we really want to do this time is make sure that we have communicated more than adequately about the fact that it's coming so that people are waiting for it. That's very important. That's why these discussions openly are also very important. For some of you on the board, I mentioned there is a town in Kansas that we've talked about a few times. And what that town does, in addition to having a very good balanced scorecard, is that in the weeks before, it is going to give this survey document either electronically or on paper form to its citizens. It has a pizza party in the town hall. People come in for about an hour or two. You could pick up a survey there, or you can find out how to get online to do the survey. You could kind of make this a little bit of a celebration. You can call it data gathering a celebration, but it's a way to communicate. It's a way to reach people and have them interested. I'd fill out a survey for a slice of pizza.
The
Oh,
other
yeah, I'd
method,
do that too.
Okay, all right.
just so you're aware, the other method, and I don't think it'll fit time-wise this year, but once we have a good model to move forward with in the future, we'll also be looking to work with the collections department through tax bills and such, which is another great way to grab property owners.
And I don't think it needs to come down to an either-or approach.
Yep.
You know, throw it all at the wall and see what sticks.
Yes,
Okay.
within the sort of frugal limits of
Yes.
wanting to roll this out
Yeah, not a
somewhat
4 or 5
paced,
course
and,
meal.
I'm not advocating, Michael, that we go to trying something new immediately right away. I love the idea of rolling out the survey, seeing how it does, getting good at it, paring it down so people don't mind doing it, starting out with every other year on individuals, every other year on business,
Yeah.
but keeping in our hearts, Jim's point, that we really need to, work towards being as in touch as possible with whoever has
Absolutely.
opinions. so.
We're on the same page.
So we can expect it back sometime second meeting in
Yeah,
September?
feel free to pass any feedback on. Jeannie,
Yep.
would you mind resending your email? That'd be great. And we'll
And
get it back
anybody
in-
else, have
in
you had
September.
another chance to look at it? Feel free to send it along.
Yep, great.
And you and I can set up a date, we can sit down, go
Great.
over it together and just take everybody's suggestions and see where we can cut what makes sense.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
We have a discussion tonight. It's not an action plan or needing action on a conflict of interest policy. Stu can lead us through that too, because this is not a new policy. It's really a revisit of one that's been in existence for some time.
Yes, we have an existing conflict of interest policy on the books. It was originally adopted by the Select Board in 1993, so it's somewhat ancient. And it is not nearly as comprehensive as the policy model that the League of Cities and Towns outlined for us in our small educational seminar. What I've done is taken that more comprehensive policy and tried to fine-tune it to meet what I think are this board's concerns about conflicts and how we handle those conflicts, recognizing that this is a policy that would govern elected officials and appointed officials of the town, not town employees. We will be amending the current policy so that it reflects a conflict of interest situation for employees, which generally runs slightly different because that gets into gifts and gratuities and those kinds of things that employees sometimes are faced with, which places them in a difficult situation. So I've prepared this for you. It's really your document, so I would ask that you comment on it, you rip it to pieces, you put it back together again, or if you like it, let's adopt it and move on.
I just read through it and looked at a couple of others in the state that have this almost verbatim in a lot of ways. The only area that I thought was a little bit confusing, and it shows up in some of the others around the state, dealt with the decisions by public officials that do not constitute a conflict of interest, and I'm trying to find the
It's Article 4A,
Article 4A, thank
if you
you.
will. I happened to notice the
Yep.
same one.
And the way it reads, it looks like either the comma's not in the right place, or it's trying to qualify it by suggesting setting a tax rate or something like that. I think it could be modified a little. Yep.
I've been looking at that, I
Yep.
have a suggestion if you
Sure.
want to consider it.
Yep.
I'll read it and then I can hand it out to all of you. Never mind what it says now, but it's the little conflict of interest policy paragraph right under Article 4A. The paragraph that concludes Article 4A could read as follows. A conflict of interest does not arise for decisions on matters in which the public official has personal or financial interest and whose outcome affects all citizens equally. Very simply, it does not arise, conflict of interest does not arise for decisions on matters in which the public official has personal or financial interest, but whose outcome affects all citizens equally. The next sentence would be, an example of this is the setting of a tax rate. Yeah. It's a suggestion. I've tried to simplify it by breaking it up into 2 sentences, which this long paragraph did not do. And this may not be the right way to do it. Maybe I should just send this to everybody.
Michael, I think that could work, but I do think the comment that it's of no greater, an establishment of the tax rate that is no greater than that of other persons generally affected by the decision. I thought the affected by the decision piece mattered.
That's very well put. That's very well put.
Say it again, Gina.
Well, I just like what Stu has given us, just the end of that paragraph, where it's giving the example, such as in the establishment of a tax rate that is no greater than that of any other persons generally affected by the decision. But it just feels like we need...
Tighten it up, because it looks like there's no such thing as a conflict of interest in the environment. Start to read it. And I think both of you captured that, and feel free to share that with Stu, if you want. And do you want it just to read it again? How
It would be helpful if somebody just emailed me the language. And then,
Yes, I'll do that. But I'll take your note too. Thank you.
This can't happen very often anyway.
This can't what?
This does not happen very often. I mean, setting a tax rate, impacts the entire community, including the board member. Probably a bylaw change impacts us all.
yeah, there would be a number of examples where board action really impacts the whole community, even though an individual may
benefit.
He or she may be impacted as well.
Yeah. That was the only thing I
think I'll promise you that Jeannie's suggestion and mine put together will make this clearer, so we'll email it to you.
So
Do
happy to hear that.
you think this solves the problem of association?
No.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're...
You said yes?
No.
Well, so I'm thinking, we've had a lot of comments over time about those of us who are associated with groups that are trying to be civic decision makers or civic leaders, the BCIC or the BBC or the various other groups that are working on a lot of different things. And the people in those groups may not have a financial stake. They may not get any financial benefit from it, but nevertheless, they might be a director of those groups. And I feel like that's really where we've had the friction. This isn't really where we've had the friction.
This is just a clarification to really make
So
it.
do we feel we need any clarification on that, or?
If I had my druthers, I would say if you are a member of any organization, that's where I could get in trouble. If you are a sitting member on the board of directors of an organization which seeks public funds from our organization, you shall recuse yourself. Not a member, not an ex officio appointee,
but a director.
But
So
a director.
you wouldn't monitor for remuneration.
Yeah. Because there's potential of favoritism, direction of business, all of those types of things. And it just takes away that element of suspicion, doubt. And I hate to use the word transparent, but that's what the word seems like.
It comes under personal interest rather than financial
Right,
interest. Yeah. Where would we put that? That is something that we want to, it's in the document in several places, but.
You mean a direct or indirect personal? Yeah.
But I'd like it to be specific so that it helps the reader understand. And again, I didn't think we were going to be spending a lot of time tonight. Maybe for the next meeting, I can propose as part of the agenda some language that we could chew on at that meeting.
That'd be great. I don't think it needs to be a straitjacket, but if it could be something that was, really help us and really help the community understand, I think it might reduce some of the chafing that happens around some of these questions on conflict of interest.
Here's the one thing that I'm concerned about, and that is that, this is to coin a phrase, a rather incestuous group of people that volunteer for these boards. You know what I mean by that. It's a small group of people.
It's a town
Yeah,
of volunteers,
yes.
and they're sitting
And,
across the spectrum.
If we, to use Donald's phrase, straitjacket ourselves, we may not get anything done. You know what I mean? Because people would have to recuse themselves in every vote.
Well, unlikely, though. I mean, it would be in very
No, I'm just
specific
saying that that's
votes.
something to think about.
Yeah.
I
I'd
think
love
it would
to
make
see
me sensitive. I think I'd be sensitive to each vote rather than to all of the vote, all of them. By way of example, if I have a membership at the Bennington Free Library, I don't think that's going to prevent me from making a decision on the budget. If I were a member of the board of directors of the BBC, I think I would step back just because of the flavor of it. And it'd make my job that much easier. I happen to be, I've been told, a member of the BBC by virtue of making
yes,
the, I frankly,
Being in the business
I
district.
don't think I would recuse myself under that context.
I think, Tom, that'd be great if you'd be willing to bring a little language that would help
Yeah.
us clarify that. And maybe, I don't know if it's necessary to give donors the same kind of protection, but I think a donor to the library should not have to recuse themselves in a situation like that either. So,
Right. Yep. Good. Can we move it that way? Is that all right with you, Stu?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda deals with a real estate matter, which I am immediately recusing myself. Seems like real estate matters are my recusal opportunity. I don't think I'll leave the bench here, if you'll let me.
Please stand.
Okay, thank you. But I will turn the gavel over to Vice Chair Keen.
Ms. Stewart, this is your show. Go right ahead.
We're going to turn this one to Mr. Monks.
Okay, thank you very much. Just some quick background. I know all of you have a memorandum, but I know the folks out in the audience may not have seen it. It came about in a transfer of the Bennington Station building, that there is a minor encroachment of the building on property owned by the state of Vermont that contains the public parking lot adjacent to the Bennington Station building. Because of that, we entered the town and the prospective purchaser and seller entered into negotiations with the state of Vermont, because the town has a long-term lease on that Bennington Station parking lot, to determine the best way to resolve that issue. The state's preferred alternative was to deed the parking lot in fee to the town, and then subsequently the town would then deed over to the prospective purchaser that small area of land that is encroached upon by the building. It's about 1,400 square feet out of a 2.5 acre lot, so it's a minuscule amount of property, but it does make it impossible to transfer that property because it's a stain on title. That encroachment needs to be dealt with. With that problem came the requirement to get formal legislative approval. Our legislators, all of them, helped out and got that legislative approval, authorizing the state to grant the parking lot property to the town, and for the town to subsequently grant to the prospective purchaser that small portion of property in which the building encroached upon. So we have all the deed language worked out, both to the town and to the prospective purchaser. The state has agreed to it, the railroad, which also has interest in the property, has agreed to it, and the town has agreed to it, and as well as the prospective purchaser. So after many, many months of trying to work all of that out with the state of Vermont and the railroad, which was fun to say the least, we are now ready to proceed, assuming that we can obtain formal select board approval. And so we are here this evening to ask for formal approval from the select board of, one, the acceptance of the transfer from the state of Vermont of the parking lot property, which is 2.5 acres, and the subsequent transfer of about 1,400 square feet to the prospective purchaser of the Bennington Station building, so that we may proceed with the real estate transactions. Really just a vote to allow the staff to take all necessary steps to effectuate that, those transactions is all we'd be looking for this evening.
So you need a formal motion and a
Yes,
vote,
we
not
would
a
like-
consensus.
Yes, a
Very
formal
good.
motion would be appropriate. Then we'll proceed with the formal notices and also with the getting the deed signed and recorded, et cetera.
Michael, I would make that motion that we accept, the town accept the 2.5 acres and subsequently transfer the 1,400 acres.
1,400 feet.
1,400 feet, 1,400 acres would be a pretty good deal for them, but 1,400 feet, yes, I'd make that motion.
Well, the motion has been made to transfer how many acres, once again?
2.5 acres.
5 acres and
1,400 feet.
1,400 feet.
1,409.6
And the
square
motion,
feet.
the motion has been seconded by Jim Carroll. Any discussions?
My only question, Dan, is how are we, who's paying for all the costs on this? Is the survey and all that kind of stuff? Is the buyer paying for that? Are we paying for that? Are we splitting the costs?
We did not pay for any of the survey costs. That was purchased. That was done by the buyer. The only cost we have incurred is our attorneys did review the deeds. Our attorney did review the deeds to make sure that there was no problem.
Well, that's
from the
great.
town's
So a
perspective.
minimal cost to the town.
Extremely
and
minimal,
In
yes.
exchange, we get this parking lot, which we have control over. Of course, with the farmer's market, we're so appreciative of having that space there and all that parking and that Riverside Park. So that's great that we could do it at virtually
Are there any
no cost.
liabilities or risks that are involved in this for the town?
None more than we already have. It's been a long-term lease. We're clearly an operator. We're clearly responsible if there were any actions taken by us that were detrimental to the property. So we really don't, because we've been such a long-time operator and leased the property for so long, it really is no additional liability for us to own it fee. It does give us the opportunity to control the property a little bit more. The only real restriction, and of course this would be what we would do this property anyways, is we cannot use it for anything but a public purpose. So in other words, we couldn't flip it to a developer. It has to be used for parking or park space or that sort of thing, which is what we would do with it anyways.
Dan, should there be a yes vote? When does this go into effect? Does it can affect immediately, or is there a document that needs to be
Well,
signed?
what will happen is, as soon as we can get the state's and the railroad's signature on the deed, we'll record it and we'll own the property. In order for us to transfer that small portion of land to the prospective purchaser, that requires a 60-day notice, and we'll be doing that probably tomorrow and start that clock running. So hopefully within 90 days, we'll have it wrapped up. Again, it's all dependent on getting those signatures from the state and the railway, which, as Tom knows, has been a bit of an issue, but we're hopefully very close.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? There being no questions, let me ask for a vote. All in favor of passing this motion, respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Very good.
I return the gavel, which, there you go, to you.
Going right into the manager's report.
I have actually 2 action items now. One is I received today from the town clerk's office a liquor license application. As many of you may know, Kevin's Sports Pub and Restaurant has been transferred to a new entity, and they hope to have a closing by the end of this month. So we have been asked to proceed with approval of the liquor license transfer, and it does require your signatures either on the approved or disapproved on the last page. I'll circulate that. The second is the upcoming Vermont League of Cities and Towns annual meeting voting delegate designation. Every year you folks appoint me to be the delegate representing the town at the annual meeting. One must be a delegate in order to vote on the business plan of the league. I've had a long-standing relationship with the league and would appreciate being your delegate once again. And that would require a motion authorizing the chair to sign.
I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I will make that motion.
We have a second. We have a motion as seconded. Any further discussion on that delegation? Hearing none, all in favor of Stu continuing in that responsible job?
Aye.
That's 6 in favor, no opposition, and no abstentions.
And then once again, very briefly, under the PFOA, we have been receiving postcards back and a number of questions from folks. The responses, I think, has been very good. And the state has recently released a listing of all of the sites that they have tested, names and address and everything, and they've asked us to transport our information that we are gathering onto that list so that they will have a complete listing of all of the responses. We are in the process of doing that. We've started that now, and they're listed by street, so it's actually much better to work with than what I was working with. So that is underway. We hope to have all of our information compiled by the end of August. The state is hoping to gather that information in order to be able to go to the potentially responsible parties and say to them, this is the desire of the municipality or municipalities, because North Bennington is involved, and we therefore want to proceed and we want you to pay for it. Those discussions are underway, but without all of the documentation in hand, they're still somewhat premature. The second thing that's happening, and I noted it in my report, is that the state has decided to fund the connection of properties along Northside Drive, Waite Drive, and actually they're adding to it a few other properties that are already immediately adjacent to municipal water lines but have not been connected. Where those folks have PFOA in their wells, they are now going to be connected at state expense. The engineering cost, it's our engineer. His cost is being borne by the state of Vermont at the present time. And we hope to see that effort, I believe, underway this fall. So that would be the first step in starting to resolve this issue about municipal water lines and PFOA in wells. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Other business to come before? Donald?
I'd like to take a minute. It's been a lot of news this week, a lot of things to take on board in the banner, and I was off last week, so I had to kind of catch up all at once, but I'd like to take a second just to really thank George Krosick for his very thoughtful, I thought, thoughtful piece in the banner about their decision to not keep Evans going on Main Street. And he and Tracy have done such a great job there. It's been a place that thousands and thousands of people have enjoyed over the years. I'm sure, Jim, you bought Matchbox cars there when you were young, as did I.
Yeah. Is that really just the front part? They're going to continue the...
They're going to keep going in Manchester, that's right, and they're going to keep the business,
in the back.
the business supplies going too. Yep, that's right. So they've done great things. But one of the things that has come up for me, and I'm not sure if it's come up for you, the rest of you, but it's resulted in a number of people approaching me about vacancies in
downtown. And can I have a show of hands that people have been approached?
Okay, so, and that sometimes backs into a question about one of the individuals that works for the town, who I think is one of the nicest and most competent people that works for us, and that's Michael Harrington, who's sitting in the back of the room. You know, his job is his very title is confusing in that he's the economic and community development person, and those are two really big things. And so I did try to bend his ear a little bit today and try to get a handle on the scope of his job, which we have always known is very large. But every time we come up with something new, it happened again tonight when we're talking about the surveying, we come up with some new thing we want to do, and it goes over to Michael. So whether it's the balanced scorecard, or whether it's the town survey, or whether it's the business survey, or whether it's the Catalyst project, or, you know, he's working on business development, he's working on marketing, PR, technology, 6 town loan programs, grants management, Agency of Transportation, Historic Preservation, USDA, downtown designation, BBC collaboration, legislative things, community development, Catalyst program, youth outreach, historic preservation, community block grants. The list goes on and on. Not to mention all the special projects that we've kind of sent his way, or that he's picked up with the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone and the Southern Vermont Marketing Initiative, town website, the social media technology. this fellow right now is managing 33 business loans, 35 housing loans, $1.6 million worth of loans that we've got going out, and another $3.5 million of grants that came in this year for a lot of different projects. So we've piled a lot on this individual. And if we're wanting to see business recruitment happen at the same time as all these other things, something's going to have to give. And I think maybe you said it tonight, Jim, as we get closer to budget time, I feel that we should be thinking more and more strategically about economic development and what kind of investment we want to make in that, and whether one person can do all of these things, all of these community things and economic development things, and still meet our expectations. So I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but when we get to budget time, things get fast and furious, and I would like to just kind of put it out there that we're expecting a lot of an individual in this situation. And we're getting a lot, Michael, so thank you for that. But I don't know, how do they manage this in other towns?
You're looking at me.
Well, I'm thinking about St. Albans. I mean, they must have cracked this nut a little bit. They didn't have one person doing the whole thing, did they?
Kansas.
Yeah, there are a number of different questions, and I want to echo what you mentioned about Michael. And I think, once again, we ought to say, Michael is overseeing, about $4.3 million of loans, budget, and grants. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a tremendous responsibility. To answer your question, one place that I refer to very often in Vermont, because of the work that the town has, that the city has done to turn itself around, is St. Albans. St. Albans has done some really radical changes over the past few years. They've done it through a tax increment financing, which they applied for and had help constructing the plan for what they would do with their downtown. But their organization is interesting. They have a city manager, equivalent of Stu Hurt in Dom Cloud. They also have a fellow by the name of Marty Manahan, who visited us down here 2 years ago or so, who is the business development manager for the town. He was mayor, a number of years back. So he kind of goes out and he markets things, and he does the relationship building and the pipeline building. Our friends in Olathe, Kansas, if you go back to their annual report, which I think I almost know as well as I know my own address, Olathe, Kansas has a clear delineation between its own sort of business development and the fact that it signals in its annual report each year that it turns to its Chamber of Commerce to be the principal engine of business development and recruiting. And I think there are combinations of this all around the country. And many, or most, have some level of regular daily, weekly outreach to potential prospects and then build a pipeline. And I think, frankly, if you have somebody who is overseeing $4.6 million, got the residential improvement ordinance in place, the new loans to enable people fixing up homes and fixing up second stories and keeping their places up to code, and all the things that Mike does, to say to Mike, get out there, get in your car, get on a plane, and go talk to people. That's tough. You can only do what you can do.
Well, that's just it.
All of us have a 10-pound bag. We can't put 15 pounds in it. We can't put 20 pounds in it. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to overload people.
Okay. Other,
Sorry.
I'd just like to echo both Mike and Don's sentiments with respect to Mike. We keep piling it up on your plate, and, you smilingly oblige. But there comes a tipping point for everybody, and I think there needs to be a discussion amongst ourselves about either getting Michael an administrative assistant, or perhaps even going so far as to split up the position into two people.
yeah, another approach would be, and it's only discussion, possible approach, is that you go and engage a professional recruiting firm, individual, and you pay that firm or that individual for that exercise. And that's all they do. Now, that's a budgetary consideration, but I don't see how we can expect our economic and community development person to do all the things that we're asking and for the community to be satisfied with the result, because these are difficult times. It's not like we have the companies coming to the door and saying, can we come in and open our shop in your community? We can't ask one person to be both the person overseeing the administration of what we have and also going out there into the community, outside the community to recruit. And maybe Mike, after hearing all of these things, would rather do the recruitment and let somebody else do the other part.
Community development.
Because that does become a difficult burden. Gee.
Back to me. So I think this is becoming a different conversation than probably what this portion is intended for. But yes, but I think we also want to think about, should we be dividing economic and community development and, recruitment or not? Are those two related but dissimilar enough jobs that we need more than one person's attention to it? So,
Thank you.
But yes, I appreciate your comments.
Just one more thing to say.
Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Just, given the events of this past week regarding Michael and as well as Kaya, I've always been very fond of the power of words and language and how they can inspire hope and or hate. I just want to mention Hitler and Kennedy, the hope that Kennedy inspired. So this is directed at myself as well, in that to use words responsibly, because there are both unforeseen and unintended consequences from the language that we use. So I will take that to heart, and I've been thinking about that all week, that words have power and they have consequences. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean?
I agree. We have to be very careful about what we say, and we also have to be willing to call out people who say things as well. Because if you don't call them out, you're part of the problem.
There's no solace in silence.
Right. That's all I have to say.
Thank you all. I think we have an executive session. We have 3 items that are really inappropriate for public comment because it would prejudice the participants and the parties to those discussions at this point. After I congratulate my godson, Mike Cutler, for his recent engagement. It's only been 9 years that make the ask. He's right on. Good luck, Mike. Could I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are taking our slight recess, and then we'll go. Slight for short.